mood. And here we go. Ice and Chrome. And I'm not sure if uThermal is really cooperating with the request of Harstem because I see the first SCV leave already. And let's get it done. The Dutch Classic in the bottom left side of Ice and Chrome. We're looking at the main base of Team Liquid's uThermal.
In the top right, as the red Protoss, it is Team Liquid's Harstem. And that's where I started to finally get on the joke, because we see uThermal sending out SCV, at least one SCV anyways. I was like, okay, so he's not gonna do his Harstem requests. Nope. I mean, maybe it's not as committed as, you know, 2 racks or very, very memey 4 racks versus Protoss, but it is starting things off pretty quick.
Yep, and that barracks is obviously awfully close towards the main base of the Protoss, so that first Reaper is going to show up real quick. Always gives me time to do the guessing game. How many probes is he going to get? I always feel like if this happens to me, if I lose 2 probes, I'm like, yeah, I did really good. If I lose 3, I'm like, well, I'm still kind of in it. And then when I cast pro gamers, it's like they barely get 1 probe, and I'm like, how's that even possible? You know, it feels like it takes forever for me to get my actual gateway unit out. So I guess Harstem is not going to take too much damage here, but it is very easy to lose a couple of probes real quick.
Yeah. You know, when I play, which is, much worse than you, I'm basically like, if someone does this and I lose 5, I'm like, whatever, not going to macro very well anyway. But of course, when it comes to the pros, like, yeah, they really take 1 or 2 losses extremely seriously because they're doing things so on point.
Okay.
So
I do want to mention, sorry, just to interrupt you. I feel like Harstem is reading this as a mind game where he's like, the barracks is probably on his side of the map and he's just hiding it and he wants me to freak out. So he didn't build the Zealot. Now, without the Zealot, you're really in the Roddy scenario. If he loses, let's say less than 3 probes here, I think it would be spectacular. But I think you always end up losing 2 to 3 workers here, at least, if not more.
That is a very good point. I mean, I think that is something that has been popular lately amongst a lot of Terrans, is to hide the Reaper, the barracks, and then actually not be so proxied. But this is something uThermal likes to do. He does it the other way as well, and it was maybe a 50-50 for Harstem. Unfortunately, he guessed to not build that Zealot, which loses him 2 probes right off the bat with the second Reaper on the way. Gotta imagine it might be 1 or 2 more. So kind of a good start for uThermal. Of course, you get the factory behind this, and he's actually playing pretty conservatively, going for the high ground command center. Also, kind of, Harstem's not gonna get back up there and see that, so...
Is that a dead Reaper?
Yep, yes it is.
Unfortunately, the grenade was just on the wrong side of the Adept. Because imagine if that grenade is just a little bit ahead of the Adept, then the Adept actually gets bounced back and it would have lived. I gotta say, if I'm Harstem and I didn't make the Zealot, only losing 2 probes, I will settle for it any day of the week. Like, I think uThermal will look at this and be like, yeah, it's all right, at least I got something done. But losing that second Reaper then against the Adept and not really getting any additional bonus damage. If I'm Harstem, I'm pretty proud of myself. I don't know if he is, but I would be.
There's definitely things to consider as well. We sometimes see the actual proxy only go for 1 Reaper or 2, but definitely not 3. I would say is kind of the old-fashioned way to do it. When the new way is just to mostly get the panic set in. So we'd have to consider that uThermal went for just a couple additional Reapers. You'd have to consider that Harstem doesn't have perfect scouting. You can't see if it's a starport or a command center. I think by now you'd realize they didn't proxy a starport. There's no Liberator on the way. But there's a starport, and there are Hellions. And that medevac drop can still be really nasty, even if you're prepared for it, honestly, because Protoss just don't have a lot of units in the early game. And in this case, Harstem's going to have his production of gateways, no Blink on the way, no Immortal will be started. I mean, his front's covered, no problem, but that drop could still do some damage.
Yeah, absolutely. But I gotta say, it feels like Harstem is really expecting this because almost all of his units are in the main base at this point. So I just hope he doesn't get jebaited by these Reapers. And if he doesn't, I think with that amount of forces in your main, you're going to be okay. Look at that hallucinated Phoenix Scout that's coming in. Come on, Mapu, show it. That is a perfect scout spot. The Hellion sees the medevac, I think, as well. Caught a glimpse of it. It doesn't really get much better than that. Harstem has everything that he really needs. Warps in another Stalker. You might still end up losing a couple probes here. Maybe going up to 3 bases is hard. But being in position makes such a big difference.
I'm actually surprised uThermal continues to push the main, but some units are out of position. Can the 4 Hellions still do their job? 2 Stalkers going to try and stop this, but the probes lining up a little bit. Got a little scary there. Actually gets that last shot to get 5 of them. But the medevac might scoop up 1 Hellion. It is unlikely to do a lot more damage past that. The Reapers couldn't do anything either. And, okay, overall, just 5 lost probes.
Yeah, that's a little more than I expected, because Harstem actually sent his Adepts and the Sentries away, and especially the Adepts are painful, because Adepts do super well against Aliens, even better than Stalkers do, but not if they're out of position, right? Because they're obviously a bit slower there as well, so that felt a bit unnecessary. It really felt that he was a bit jebaited by that Reaper that was preventing him from going up to 3 bases. uThermal's going to try to be more annoying, but all things considered, I still think Harstem is going to be okay with it. He's going to be more than okay with it if he gets the medevac, but uThermal's not going to let that happen. And it's going to be a quick Colossus opening over here.
Oh, nice save in the medevac. Oh, I spoke too soon. There's actually a Stalker. Okay, well, that's going to be trapped there for a while. Probably the point where it doesn't matter nearly as much, but yeah. Yeah, I was surprised by the pull away as well, but I think there was a little of that, like, well, I saw you set up for what looked like a medevac drop, so I think you're not going to do it because you saw me see you. You know, that's a
Yeah,
mental game that went down. But yeah, I don't think 5 probes is that bad. I think you got to look at the other things that have been happening, right? Like how much production on the workers has been going down. I mean, Kronos for Harstem. He's only at 5 workers. And uThermal's actually trying to do an on-location 3rd command center. I think this is quite bold of him, and I'm actually really glad that Harstem is going to do something, anything, just to get a, like, potentially a quick cancel without Stim. Actually, I don't think he can, even without Stim. Yeah. A little too much, I think.
Cyclone getting a lot of damage, at least gets an STV, but that's quite a few Terran units. You know, while I'm thinking about it, as we have this skirmish going on and the force fields will buy some time, Stim is actually going to finish up, and I wouldn't mind if uThermal stims here to get on top of the Sentry. No, he's not going to stim, but he does get the Sentry. Meanwhile, Harstem miscontrolling a couple of Stalkers in the center, loses those, loses the Observer. Okay, this actually went downhill real quick for Harstem.
Yeah, I was like, you know, I like that he's trying to, like, check up on this, but I guess, you know, he didn't have blinks. It's not like he could bring his Stalker safely. There was actually no safe way of withdrawing if Stim was going to finish up, and now Stim is finished after losing a decent amount of units. Interference switch is available on that Raven as well. That one Colossus was actually the key to his defense, and it's out of the equation for just a little while longer. Oh, this is not looking so hot, especially with the second interference matrix. Oh, the Colossus just is not doing anything. It wants help so bad, it can't do anything.
The double interference matrix on the Colossus is going to seal the deal here for uThermal to pick up a quick and easy game 1 there in the end. That was kind of weird as well. I know weird is kind of the word of the day so far, but I was with you. I was like, yeah, I kind of like that little move from Harstem. I was like, well, wait a minute, uThermal has quite a bit more. I was like, it's not that bad. You can just disengage. And then he kind of just derped a little bit with the Stalkers in the center. You lose the Observer, and one of the big downsides of going quick Colossus 3 base means that other than the Colossus, the rest of the Protoss army is just useless. You don't have Blink, you don't have Charge, you don't have upgrades. It's nothing, but that army is there to protect the Colossus. And that's where the Raven comes into play. Interference Matrix can disable it. If that Raven would have been picked off, or if that Raven wasn't there, Harstem just pops a Guardian Shield and he defends, right? Without an issue at all. And we have a completely different game. Well, we had that crazy chase happening. I do wonder if maybe the hallucinated Phoenix didn't see the medevac and maybe it only saw those 4 Hellions.
I don't think that it did.
Yeah, because I saw uThermal send it actually further towards the left. And maybe then Harstem was like, oh, okay, he's going to try to, like, launch the Reaper grenade and my Stalker gets bumped out of the way and then the Hellions drive into the natural. Maybe that's why Harstem brought those units to the naturals in Harstem's defense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was still some suspicion. Plus, let's be real, if a Terran does see that you scout them going for the drop, they could, because the Reapers are still alive, because they're available, because uThermal definitely is capable of bopping a Stalker out of the way, they could definitely just be like, okay, no, this is the thing that you're not expecting. So that's why I brought up, like, kind of like the mind games as well. But yeah, I don't think he quite saw the medevac. He was a little bit more in the dark. We were letting on a little bit, but for that final thing, I think also what's important when you go for those Colossus builds is also kind of starting the fight a little prematurely. You know what I mean? Yeah. Kind of getting a panic response. So they use one interference matrix very quickly, and then you just back away. The fact that uThermal literally just, like, took out those units, immediately countered right into the 3rd base, right through that choke. I think Harstem already knew that he had taken too much, and then a second interference matrix comes down. I mean, that really hurts. But that was a much cleaner game for uThermal than I was expecting.
And there was not a single shield battery either at the 3rd. I don't think.
Yeah, one was building, and then uThermal made sure to snipe it. I think that happened.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunate game for Harstem, and those are the kind of games that sting as well. Especially because Ice and Chrome, I think, is a map that a lot of Protoss players are gonna feel a little bit comfortable at. They'll be like, yeah, you know, it's big. We can go up to 3 bases a lot quicker. We can get the setup going of having our observers in the right place, and we'll take the game from there. Now that opportunity kind of got taken away. The second map is going to be played on Everdream. And Everdream, you don't really think immediately like, oh, 3-base Colossus openings, because those early pushes that we all know uThermal loves to do over and over again, they're devastating. We saw it earlier with Sorg and Skillis. It's bonkers, it's tanks. It showed up 4 minutes and 40 seconds into the game at the natural. That was a tank, there was a whole bunch of Marines and a couple of SCVs. That's normally when a medevac shows up that's carrying 2 or maybe 3 Widow Mines. It's just, that really goes to show how quickly some of those crazy builds, if Terrans skip the Reaper, show up in your natural as a Protoss player.
I think that's a really good comparison because you're absolutely right. It's there's harassment which can be dealt with good micro, and then there's an actual push which has to be dealt with by actually acknowledging that it's on the way, trying to get ahead of it again, like maybe even pulling the probes when you don't quite have a lot of units, and very different responses. So I think you absolutely have to be scared of that on Everdream against a guy like uThermal. It's kind of funny that we've had Everdream as the map number 2 for every single series so far, but I'm actually even a little bit surprised that the Protoss are letting this one through. I feel like it's scary for Protoss, but apparently they don't.
No, I'm with you. I definitely think it's a little scary as well. I obviously play the game in my own way, and I see certain things in my own way, but Harstem is not too much of a Phoenix player. A couple of the other Protosses do like to bust out a Phoenix build against Terran every now and then. Even Showtime, right? You see him on Eternal Empire or something, open up Phoenixes. Harstem doesn't seem to do that very often, and maybe that's why he's okay with this map. As we are loading in, as you guys can see in the bottom left side, we look in the main base of the Dutch Protoss. He's down 0-1. Representing Team Liquid as well, it is Harstem.
In the top right, as the blue Terran Team Liquid player, he is uThermal. And I should correct my previous sentence that it's scary for Protoss unless the Protoss gets that first blink pressure in, right? You know what I mean? Like, who does the pressure first? And if it's not blink stalker pressure, then I think it's a tough map for Protoss. But as a Terran, I have to say that blink 4-gate build is scary.
I mean, I can't argue with that. We have seen it be super successful over the last 2 months. We've seen a lot of Terran players be quite infuriated about that build and just going up against it in general. But I always think it's so funny how quickly that shifts, right? Like, at first we see a build and we're like, wow, that's really good. And then it's like, yeah, I guess you kind of have to be parting. And at this point, whenever I see that opening come out of Protoss, I'm like, I don't know if that's really going to get the job done, because the element of surprise of that build is kind of gone, and the Terran players just got so much better in responding. They know where they want to put their tanks, they know how many tanks they want to build, and they know when to pull SCVs. So I think it's going to be okay for uThermal. I don't think we're going to see that kind of a game here.
Yeah, the last TVP I brought up, it was kind of maybe a little too obvious nowadays, but it also feels like, sometimes it feels like just how good the Protoss player feels that particular day, like how much they want to be in control of the game, not playing passive, as well as if they feel like they can be the parting micro or not. But I think the safer play would be for Harstem just to go into that defensive stance. I think he does pretty well here. I've never really marked Harstem as a macro player, but if I was asked, I'd be like, yeah, okay, macro it is then. Where uThermal obviously is well known for being aggressive.
No, absolutely. I'm totally with you on that one. I think Harstem is one of the more defensive Protoss players in Europe, together with Showtime. And a couple of others are a bit in between. I think Drogo is a bit defensive as well, but he also likes to be aggressive. Then DNS is a lot more aggressive. Mana is super aggressive. If I think of Harstem, I think of somebody who wants to scout, wants to sit back, and wants to build up a proper army. And once in a while, he'll do something crazy. But the majority of the games, it's about surviving and getting ahead.
Well, we do have a Robo opener here for Harstem. No Twilight, no Stargate. And dealing with that Reaper so far, no problem. uThermal seems to be just setting up into a Widow Mine drop. The factory is not that close to that reactor. And playing quite nice with the bunker, quite safe.
Harstem is going to get his Adept out on the map. That's obviously kind of what you want to do here, because you want to at least shade up that ramp once to see if that's a factory, is that a barracks? It is a barracks, and that's all that Harstem sees. Now, normally this doesn't really mean anything. Against somebody like uThermal, I'd be a little bit worried, because uThermal also likes the 3-racks openings, right? Where sometimes he just walks to the other side of the map with a random squad of bio units. So I'd still be a tiny bit concerned about that if I was Harstem. But maybe he just knows that this is going to be factory play.
That is a good point. The 3 racks has kind of come back a little bit. Like it has these weaknesses that we always have to bring up, but if it's a surprise, it's a really good surprise. So it can occur. This time we're going to have what looks to be a setup for a potential Everdream push, actually. The Viking coming out is actually a little bit interesting. I mean, he hasn't seen what technology it is, but we're kind of getting to that point where an Oracle would have shown up, so it feels like he's just going to land.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It probably is just going to make 2 Vikings and land both of them. And they do a serious amount of damage on the ground. And it's also nice if there's like an early Prism, right? And you can be able to get a couple of shots off on that. What is he building after that? That's a medevac. So it's Viking medevac. Yeah, but I do think, might actually send it into the main base and then just land the Viking in the main. That's a play that we've also seen in the past. Vikings are really good against workers. I know a lot of things are, but Vikings are really good.
It's funny that they can kind of replace a Liberator, you know? Like, they're pretty darn good indeed. There's a lot of detection here for Harstem. He's going to be able to see the Viking, but the correct response is still going to be something he has to, kind of decide last second, because he also has to worry about the push onto his 3rd, which he did see. So he's moving in, building shield batteries. They're not done yet.
I think he's sending too many units to deal with this Viking. I'm actually very worried here for Harstem. The sentry is super important. It goes down immediately. I think this is a perfect spot to already siege. I don't like that warp in at all, because that means that Stalker will get obliterated. Yes, this is just not looking good at all for Harstem. Yes, he has taken care of the Viking, but he sent 3 units to take care of this Viking. Now the double tank setup is here. I don't see how he run into this. He's going to do it. What? He's crazy.
It's going through the choke. The Immortal takes a long time to get on top of that tank, so they got plenty of shots off on the Stalker. The Zealots are doing some good work against the Marines, but now uThermal even microing against that is not going to be able to save a second tank, so maybe this can be cleaned up. Oh, but the bunker is finishing. No target fire on that SCV. He's going to take out some probes alongside probably that Nexus, and that's going to be just too much damage to take.
Yep. That final Stalker is almost going down as well. If I was uThermal, I'd just kill the Nexus now, by the way. That's actually somewhat of a close call, but it is enough in the end. Oh my goodness. Hero Marine, what are you doing in this game, okay?
Oh man, that was so close. I thought he was going to have to go to the bunker to get that. I was actually quite concerned, but the split-second decision to start focus firing the Nexus does work out. Now that is Harstem saving at least some of his army. It wasn't a total reset of the army supply. He still lost probes, he still lost the 3rd Nexus, and he still tried to defend it. That wasn't just like, okay, I don't have any chance, let's just pull back. That was still a bit awkward for him. So now uThermal sending over his command center already pre-orbital, just wants to get the saturation going, and I don't think he has to worry about a counter. He's got 2 tanks. He's even got a Raven, so Harstem can't even really get a good judge of how the setup is to, I think, even really use this army. He's going to try, and let's see if he can do anything.
Man, I was actually going to predict uThermal to win this series, okay? But because both of you guys went uThermal, I was like, okay, I'll go Harstem. And I was like, you know what? I kind of believe it as well. I think there is a chance. But traditionally, I always pick uThermal. And the little Protoss whiner in me as well believes that Terran is pretty good against Protoss at this point. And now 7 minutes into game 2, I regret my choice, okay? I should have been lame. I should have been boring. And I should have gone with what you guys went for as well, because this is just not looking good at all. I know that Harstem has 55 probes. Maybe if you can just buy enough time, but this is such a rough start to lose all those units, lose the Immortal, lose the Nexus, lose a bunch of probes on top of that as well. It's not pretty.
uThermal is taking like a lot of precautions as well. He's not going to let this game slip through his fingers. We got missile turrets against a Warp Prism. I think he's probably keeping his eye out for any DTs. Obviously, he has a Raven, so doesn't even really have to. He even built a bunker at the 3rd, just in case Harstem did replace the Nexus. He at least scouted that, but then, maybe was kind of faking it and went all into production. It's not what's happening, but this is not a lot for uThermal to invest in. Like, he salvages the bunker, and then missile turrets will be helpful for a later game anyways. But he keeps himself super safe. He feels very confident about a macro game, and he has a Raven not just for some, anti-DT, anti-observer. Once again, the interference matrix on top of these Colossus units that Harstem is really going to depend on.
This is just a very tough, upcoming 2-3 minutes right now for Harstem, and he knows it because that early game was not good enough. It is possible. Maybe if uThermal makes a misstep or 2, you have your units in the right position. The problem is Harstem doesn't have an army right now that can really make plays, right? Like, he doesn't have Blink Stalkers, he doesn't have Storm, he doesn't have Disruptors. So it's one of these armies that can only really sit there and fight. And then you just have to hope that your opponent makes a terrible mistake, takes a terrible engagement. But uThermal is one of the most experienced players in the scene at this point. He's been around for so long. Both of these guys, once upon a time, won a big offline tournament in China. That was 2016, year of the Dutch. And I think right now, Harstem also knows that he's going to activate Guardian Shield immediately. That's really important. I love that tank positioning by uThermal. There's the interference matrix. Widowmine drop is as well on the left side. And Jess, this seems like an unwinnable fight for me.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised Harstem's not pulling back, trying to give his Colossus part of the fight. He loses, I think, his Immortals. One barely. Nope, just kidding. He loses his Immortals.
Natural, Mapu.
The natural also not being paid attention to. Harstem slipping up in multiple places. Loses 13 probes, and he is going to tap out. GG.